Our next guest, by the way, his main area of research is what some people call high strangeness or
Same.
window areas. I like to call it the new weird, where the separate types of paranormal phenomenon all seem to occur in the same location.
Phenomenon.
Do 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 do. By the way,
Phenomenon.
do 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 do. Carry on. What's really kind of cool about this stuff, too, though, is that there are a number of people who have already been a part of this show, the High Strangeness podcast, our good friend Julian Simpson with the Lovecraft investigation, who talk about tears and seams in which all kinds of strange things come through. That, by the way, is the area of focus and the area of passion of our next guest, who I am thrilled to introduce, Steve Ward, and you can find out more about what Steve is up to over at the mothmanmuseum.com. I could talk about his service. I could talk about his pursuit of the strange and the weird. I could talk about his encounters, but they are so much a part of who he is. I have a feeling a lot of it is going to reveal itself over the course of this conversation. Go to mothmanmuseum.com. It's over in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and it is our pleasure to welcome him to the show this morning. Good morning, Steve.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you and happy to dive deep. And Steve, we alluded a little earlier on the show about we're going to sort of dive deep about with Mothman prophecies, the warnings. Is it a angel or demon? There's a lot to dive deep in. But as much as I want to start here, and this is kind of throwing you right into throwing you the wolves right away. But I'm curious because you've had these fascinations with the weird and the folklore and the wild, and growing up in Michigan with the UFO flap occurring virtually in your backyard, as you say. So I'm curious to you, right from the get-go, do you think that these kinds of sightings or fascinations happen to people or through people? Meaning, are we experiencing an external entity, or are we tapping into something perhaps that our consciousness doesn't normally have access to?
Well, probably a little bit of both. It certainly is an external phenomenon or force that has been with mankind forever. John Keel, who was the author of the Mothman Prophecies, believed that certain people were naturally tuned into some of this. So he thought some people were naturally, psychic, for lack of a better word, and some people experience these things more than others. I experience almost nothing, so I have to talk to people that have had these experiences. But it's and John Keel also thought that these things, there was some kind of an external force or reality to this, but he also thought that people may be sort of co-creating some of these experiences. I mean, if you look at the history of the UFO phenomenon over the years, the strange lights in the sky have been interpreted differently over the years. Perhaps they've even manifested differently. That's another question. But in the way, if you go way back, the strange lights in the sky, some people they call them fairy lights. Some people really believe that witches were flying around on their brooms carrying lanterns. As the years progressed, you had the mysterious airship flap in the late 1800s. Sometimes people just saw a strange light in the sky. Other times people seemed to see a huge dirigible-like craft that was ahead of our technology at the time. And then it went to the strange, mysterious airplanes that showed up in Sweden in the north. Huge airplanes with several propellers that were, nobody knew where they were coming from or where the base was. The Foo Fighters of World War II, strange lights following the pilots. Each side thought the other side had some kind of advanced technology, and then you kind of morph into the modern UFO age where people are more attuned to science fiction ideas, and then you see craft that's more egg-shaped, saucer-shaped, and so forth. So I think there's kind of a duality here. I think that there is a real physical aspect to all this in some cases. Keel, people need to delve into John Keel. He was a century ahead of everybody, and he saw that these things, many of these things, seem to be connected. And he would use terms like ultra-terrestrial. He kind of wanted to get away from the idea that these things might all be extraterrestrial. He believed a lot of this, while unexplained, was still a natural condition of the planet. And he would use great words like transmogrification. Now, the only other place I've ever seen that used is in Calvin and Hobbes comic strips. Remember that? He had his cardboard box with his transmogrifier. Well, he believed that some of these things were not necessarily flesh and blood cryptids or nuts and bolts craft. They might actually be temporary manifestations of some intelligence or some underlying principle we don't understand. But it's very difficult to condense Keel's ideas into a few sound bites or a paragraph.
Well, that's what's so fun about it, too, though, in a lot of ways, because, and by the way, I am speaking almost entirely from what I would call fictional narrative, the fictional narrative approach. The idea that a group of people, in the sense that there is something there, but its manifestation often relies upon the collective consciousness of the time, that it always presents itself in whatever the anxieties or the deep concerns of the period are, meaning the thing is eternal, but its manifestation is very temporal for its moment, and that the vibrational energies of the anxiety of a particular culture allow that thing to take on the form of the thing that is mostly kind of lurking in the subconscious of those who encounter it. Is that kind of the thinking behind it? Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, partly, but it would be dangerous to think that explains everything. Carl Jung, who wrote one of his books was very controversial, Flying Saucers, a myth of things seen in the sky. He's the one that talked about the collective unconscious, and that some of these, he didn't think people were crazy or hallucinating. He thought these things may be a projection, in some cases, of the collective unconscious. And he talked about the Mandela, the striving, the yearning of people to experience goodness or to experience this wholeness. And he thought that the shape of these craft might explain some of that. But some of the phenomena is very negative as well. So, and I'm not going on the demonic side, but there's sort of a yin and yang to all this. So he captured part of it. He suffered for it too, because his colleagues hated that book and wish he hadn't written it.
Really quickly, and so what I'm kind of suggesting is to go one step further, that there is something there. And like I said, I am what I'm called counting angels on the heads of needles here. But there is something there, but that it manifests. How do I put this? The thing is there, but its manifestation is directly tied to those who perceive it. Am I making sense when I say that?
Yes. Well, some of these things leave landing marks. One of the early Mothman witnesses, Connie Carpenter, when she was driving by the Mason County golf course, and by the way, this entity, creature, manifestation, it was somewhat humanoid in appearance, 6-7 foot tall, red glowing eyes, 10-foot wingspan. This thing was in daylight, took off straight up from without flapping its wings from the golf course, flew over her car. She experienced a case of conjunctivitis. Now, a lot of, eye burn. A lot of people have experienced that have been in close proximity with strange lights in the sky and apparently unknown craft. But in this case, it was with supposedly a cryptid or a creature. So there are all kinds of these things leave footprints sometimes, even hair samples. So there is a physical interaction at many times. So these things are at least temporarily physical, and I think that it's possible that some of these are actually flesh and blood entities from, I don't know, other planets, other dimensions, or maybe from some hidden realm on the planet. So it's if you go, there's a gentleman named Albert Rosales has an incredible database of humanoid reports, and he has about 15 books out, from 01 AD all the way up to the 2015, I think. And if you read through these experiences, many of them are very credible. Some of them ring more like a Keelian idea, like a temporary manifestation. Others don't. Others kind of seem like they're actually present a real physical entity, a real physical encounter of something from elsewhere. So it's like trying to navigate through landmines to try to sort out how to put these things in different categories.
And, I mean, you use the word demon again, and I wonder if sometimes you think calling something a demon is just us really naming fear. There's so many things that we don't have a word for, so we just give it a quote unquote human word, and then it gets sort of pigeonholed. But, Mothman, it's been labeled everything from angel to demon to interdimensional travel, as you said. But, those labels come out of our own human framework. So, and your thought, Steve, when we strip away the, whether it's religion or folklore or the phenomenon of it, what do you think that the phenomenon itself actually represents?
Well, when people ask this question, I go through the way this thing has presented itself or manifested to people. Mm-hmm. And while the general description, now John Keel talked to a little over 100 people that year between roughly. He came down in December of '66, and he was actually in New York when the Silver Bridge collapsed. 13 months to the day that the Scarberries and the Mallets were supposedly chased by the Mothman out of the TNT area, and he had the descriptions were very similar, but not all. Some people just saw like a large bird, like a thunderbird. Some people saw just a big ugly bird, so it wasn't completely consistent. But here you had something that looked like it might be a physical flesh and blood creature that didn't always flap its wings. Many people that saw it, Keel found, and a Swedish researcher named Franzen that followed him a couple of years later, found that many people that saw it had an experience in an outbreak of poltergeist phenomena for a couple of weeks after they got home. There was a preacher, a minister, Reverend Gray, and his wife Pat. I was able to talk to her. She wrote a book called The Thing. They were missionaries. When this broke, they hadn't seen the newspapers. They were leaving the next day to be missionaries in a far-off country. And that night, this thing manifested in their bedroom, they said. Very credible. They're on the Small Town Monsters, the Mothman of Point Pleasant documentary. And they described the Mothman, essentially, but manifesting. And then, now in their context, they thought it was demonic. There was John Keel got a couple reports from people that said that it sounded like it was something that in close proximity. It sounded like there was kind of a humming noise or something mechanical. There are a couple people that had missing time when they saw it. And, so it's very hard to pull all that together. One time somebody asked me, what was the Mothman? What did it represent? And then out of my mouth came, it was an elemental. And then I said, don't ask me what an elemental is because I don't know. But it did not seem, there was something, it doesn't fit some of the other cryptids actually. There's a high strangeness aspect to many of the Bigfoot reports and other so-called cryptids. So, but Mothman is almost in a category by itself. There are many, many other winged reports of winged creatures. 1903, the Van Meter visitor, a pterodactyl-like creature that had gave off a glow on its nose, like a horn on its nose, was very pterodactyl-like, and was seen over a period of a week in September of 1903. The Houston Batman in the 50s, some people said they saw it looked like a man wearing some kind of suit. You had the Wisconsin man bat, I think in the early 2000s. A man and his son saw this big, ugly bat-like thing come toward the car, brush up against the windshield. When they got home, they were deathly ill. So these things are almost like I borrow a term from Dr. Donald Omond. He called it the phantom menagerie. That's a great name. It's almost like these things come out of the monsters from the id idea that came out of the movie Forbidden Planet. You wonder, it sometimes, and another thing I should say that while John Keel found a lot of this to be kind of negative, he fell short of calling it demonic, literally demons and so forth. But so it's, I guess I can't really answer the question well, because we really don't know what it was. Keel never solved the mystery of the Mothman.
I think, Jim, too, and what I'm hearing Steve say, I think when our limited vocabulary, when we try to label something, we mess everything up. So it's just everybody's going to experience it in their own way, just as we all perceive life differently, experiences differently. It's the same kind of thing, Jim. I don't know if you resonate with that, but that's what I feel.
No, I'm inclined to agree that there is something that happens that an ellipses is often those three periods that happen when the word and the words escape us and break down, bits and pieces floating out there that we seek to put together. By the way, in case you guys don't know, Steve also has his own podcast on the Paranormal UK radio network called the High Strangeness Factor, which can be heard every other week, and he's also a correspondent on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files, which airs every week. He's also a co-writer of a book with Mark Randall on the events of 66 and 67, those famous Mothman moments in the Ohio Valley. That book is called Mothman High Strangeness. Mark Randall did the artwork, and he and Mark wrote various of the sections, and he graciously joins us this morning. I do want to get a little of this bureaucracy out of the way here, too, because we want to make sure we promote Steve Ward the best we can. Go to mothmanmuseum.com. You can find out about a lot of the stuff we've talked about as well. In regards to your museum, what do you find the seekers that come there are looking for? Is it mostly people just kind of dropping in for a little bit of a spooky, creepy feeling, or do you find you have pilgrims that show up at your place?
Everybody shows up all over the world. The man that founded it was Jeff Walmsley, he also co-created the great Mothman Festival, which happens every third weekend in September. And Jeff was 5 and 6 years old when all this happened. He was actually in his basement way up on 30th Street when the bridge collapsed on December 15th, 1967. A lot of people are aware of the Mothman. You know, for a while, John Keel was being forgotten, and but fortunately, much of his works have been republished. A lot of people were tuned into the Mothman from the film with Richard Gere. It came out in 2002. And I invite people that I actually was able to interview Richard Haddam, who wrote the screenplay, on my podcast. And he came and spoke at the Mothman Festival last year. Great guy. It was great to get into his head about how he, and John Keel, by the way, loved his screenplay. He thought that finally somebody, while they told their own story, somebody captured some of the basic ideas of his book.
It's a very humanist movie.
People,
have you noticed that, Steve? It is a very humanist movie. It is not a horror film as much as it is one that is deeply melancholic and concerned about the human beings that are inhabiting it. And I think it's what separates it. That and Gere and Laura Linney's performances are just, they're playing it like a drama, and it plays like that just happens to have a spectacular high strangeness in the middle of it. That's what's so compelling. It's about human beings. And
Alan Bates, who played the learned author that had, he was played. His name was Dr. Leek.
He's great.
In the movie. Of course, Leek is Keel spelled backwards. And the conversations between Alan Bates and Richard Gere were just fantastic. But people have. It's like the museum and Point Pleasant and all the surroundings were their mecca. They finally made it there. There was one young man that was so dumbfounded. He was just standing there with his hands apart. He was just so happy to be there. People absolutely love it. And there's the Mothman statue, which a gentleman named Bob Roach created back in 2002 or 3, I guess it was. And there's a moth cam where you can see people come up to it, all times of the day, all times of the year. And people propose in front of the statue, celebrate birthdays and wedding anniversaries.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just, and people will show up in bizarre costumes. And it's great because when I'm on duty there, I'll take photographs of them by the statue, and I'll just write one day at the Mothman statue and let the chips fall. So, and I've talked to people from all over the world, all over the U.S., and it's the film that triggered it. And there are many, many documentaries. Jeff Walmsley, Denny Bellamy, who runs the tourist bureau there, and and Charles runs they have over the years they created the amphitheater. They've and Jeff has two other stores. He has the Point Pleasant Trading Company. He has a vinyl shop called Bunker 304. We have Mothman Blacklight Mini Golf. We have a Mothman escape room. The whole town, it was so depressed years ago after that bridge collapsed. It took 2 years to build the new Silver Bridge. And some friends of mine, Bill and Jackie Kuselis, wrote a book called Bridging the Tragedy, where they interview people that narrowly missed the bridge, lost family and friends when the bridge collapsed, and also the way it affected the town for years. But it has been revitalized, and we had over 30,000 people come to the Mothman Festival last September. And I even spoke to at the 2017 Remembrance Ceremony. We have every December 15th, they have a remembrance ceremony downtown at where the bridge used to run from 6th Street, just two streets from the Mothman Museum, over to Ohio. There's a mural, a memorial, and the 46 names of the people that died are embedded on the sidewalk across the street. I had a chance to talk to Bill Edmondson, who went down on the bridge that night. Now, this is December 15th. It's the sun's almost down. It's 20 degrees. The bridge is full of rush hour traffic and Christmas shopper traffic. It went down, and unlike the film, in reality, it went down in 30 to 40 seconds. Bill Edmondson was in his truck. He was clinging to the steering wheel, trying to stay in place as this thing is tipping, hits the water, is forced through the passenger window, right arm first. He had to have a pin put in later. Fortunately, he got out. The currents pulled him up to the surface. A tugboat captain saw him and pulled him up out of the river. And the article on him is one of the many articles and clippings you'll find in the Mothman Museum, which is just it has everything there. It even has the article from the Stars and Stripes military newspaper, because when that first sighting hit on November 15th, the two couples were out there by the Old North Power Plant, and they saw this, whatever it was, and chased them into town. That hit the wire services all over the world, even before Mothman had a proper name. They were just calling him the Bird back then. So there's just so much, and plus there's surrounded by American history, the Revolutionary War, Chief Cornstalk. I mean, it's just, I tell people, listen, you've got to make the pilgrimage to come to the festival. But it's crazy crowded.
Steve,
one thing I will tell you.
Steve, I'm going to tell you right now, we are going to come. We're going to come next year.
Yeah,
we're going to come next year.
Because I need to see. We're almost out of time, Steve. So sorry to cut you off, but I just want you to tell her, and it's really quick because this place it's not just folklore. It's actually really well documented. With just about a minute left, what's one item in the museum that consistently makes people stop in their tracks?
Oh boy. Well, we have Men in Black displays. Actually, they're evil mannequin in black displays. We have there's so much there. I will warn people of one thing. We have 5 documentaries going at one time. The one back is the Mothman Legacy by Small Town Monsters. If you watch it long enough, you may see my handsome countenance in there a few times. So
Perfect.
Don't be alarmed.
Perfect. And Steve, by the way, Jim, while we were talking, a moth just flew in my studio, and it is like 28 degrees here. So I'm not used to seeing moths right now, and I'm waiting for him to, evolve into a full human and sit across from me. So
I hope he's not a harbinger.
I hope not, too.
Steve Ward, we can't stop him. We can't even hope to contain him. We simply have to support him. You can find a lot of great stuff over at Mothman Museum. As I told you guys before, he hosts a number of really great podcasts and co-hosts them, and is a contributor on the Paranormal UK Radio Network's High Strangeness Factor and on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files. He's got a book called Mothman High Strangeness. You can be found on Facebook, and the Phantom Menagerie is a page you can find him on as well. He currently resides at Point Pleasant. I'm glad he practices what he preaches and works part-time at the Mothman Museum. Steve, you're welcome back anytime. No kidding.